And we're recording now?
Correct.
Very good. All right. We are now in session. This is the Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Megan is our clerk today. Megan, could you kindly call the roll?
Ryan. Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. And we'll turn it over to legal counsel for the rules of order and decorum. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Portland City Council. City Council is holding hybrid public meetings.
with limited in-person attendance in addition to electronic attendance. If you wish to testify before council in person or virtually, you must sign up in advance by visiting the council agenda on the council clerk's webpage, portlandoregon.gov/council agenda. If you may sign up for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions, reports, or the first readings of ordinances. In-person testimony may occur from one of several locations, including City Council chambers and the Lovejoy Room in City Hall and the Portland Building. Written testimony may be submitted at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you're representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have about 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. A timer will indicate when your time is done. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. So if there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, council may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And I want to give a shout out to our friends up in the Open Signal booth. We don't always get to see them, and it's kind of awesome to see you guys. So thank you for the hard work that you do. Give us a wave. You deserve a little kudos for the hard work you do. Thank you, both of you. We have our first item today is item 486, a time certain emergency ordinance, 2 p.m.
Authorize Director of the Office for Community Technology to execute Digital Inclusion Fund grant agreements not to exceed $250,000 for FY 2021-22.
All right, Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm excited to introduce this item today. When I was given the privilege to oversee Office of Community Technology, I was committed to providing flexible funding to address our community's technology needs in real time. And I thank my colleagues on council for approving the Digital Inclusion Fund this past fiscal year. I will now hand it over to Rebecca Givens, Strategic Initiatives Manager for OCT, to give us some background on the Digital Inclusion Fund.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Can we pull up the slide deck, please? Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Rebecca Gibbons, she, her, Strategic Initiatives Manager with the Office for Community Technology. We're excited to be here with you today to seek signature authority to sign grant agreements as a result of the generous funding support Council provided in this year's budget to create an ongoing digital inclusion fund. The request to create a digital inclusion fund was brought forward to Council because of what we knew prior to the pandemic, that digital adoption is essential for a healthy, economically vibrant community, and our community's marginalized residents are the most impacted. As we've shared before with you all, Indigenous populations, Black, African American, and Latinx households have the lowest rates of broadband access and adoption. Additionally, people living with disabilities and seniors are being left behind as technology and internet use become an essential part of attaining generational wealth and achieving social well-being. And finally, that the city has a role in not only addressing infrastructure needs, but also helping build capacity in our community to bridge the complex elements that contribute to a community member's success in accessing and using technology. Next slide. So in addition to allocating CARES Act and ARPA funding to support community digital adoption needs over the last year, This council also allocated $250,000 annually to create the Digital Inclusion Fund. The Digital Inclusion Fund is a pivotal point in our digital equity journey because it creates an ongoing source of funding support to build and innovate sustainable capacity in our community. This is really important because we know that being a digital adopter, someone that is confident in learning and using the ever-evolving technology, is an ongoing process, best delivered over time through trusted community members who are often embedded in our local nonprofits, libraries, and school systems. Digital adoption means having a consistent, high-speed, affordable internet connection in the home, a computing device other than a phone, and access to ongoing, culturally relevant digital skills training and technical support. We're thrilled to be finally moving forward in a direction that supports new services and resources in the community, tailored to the specific needs we've long been hearing about. Council set some guidelines for the fund, 30% to be used to support small businesses and 70% to support the general public. But otherwise, the flexibility of the fund allows us to be responsive to current community identified needs. Through extensive community-led discussions, this year's funding was designed to build and scale digital Navigator services in the community. We ran 2 grant initiatives, one to support residents in the community and the other to support small emerging businesses and BIPOC entrepreneurs. Our presentation today includes Lena Gonzalez-Baird, our new Digital Equity Coordinator, who is here to talk a little bit more about how nonprofit community leaders engaged in the creation and development of our inaugural grant opportunities. We will then hear from representatives of the 3 organizations recommended to receive grant funding about their proposed Digital Navigator grant projects. And finally, we're excited to announce that we've also made progress on another of our goals for the fund, which was to use it to leverage resources and build new collaborations. A representative from Comcast is also here today to talk about how OCT and Comcast have used the Digital Inclusion Fund to partner on the Digital Navigator pilot in support of community-led digital inclusion strategies. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lena to talk more about how the grant program design and outreach. So we can go to next slide and I'll hand it over to Lena.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I am Lena Gonzalez, they, them, Digital Equity Coordinator with the Office for Community Technology. I'd like to share more about how we co-created our inaugural Digital Inclusion Fund grant initiative, not only through an intentional and robust community engagement process in its design, but further by incorporating fundamental participatory grant-making ideals into the decision-making process. Next, oh, there we are, we have it, thank you. So, sorry, slide 3, please. Thank you. So this first year of the Digital Inclusion Fund is focused on providing resources for 3 digital navigator programs in the community. In June 2021, OCT conducted robust community outreach in order to inform the forthcoming ARPA Tech Kit project. We engaged 38 frontline organizations, specifically those that serve people that are digitally excluded because they do not have access to a device or affordable and fast home internet. The data collected then served as yet another way to inform our current funding initiative. In addition to insights about device and connectivity needs, we received an overwhelming response about the critical need for digital skills training and technical support once people receive their computers and connectivity solutions. In fact, our data showed that 71% of respondents strongly agreed that more resources are needed to meet communities' digital skills training and technical support needs. These individuals are called digital navigators. A digital navigator ensures each learner finds fast, affordable home internet access, devices, and receives foundational digital skills training so they can meet their goals. And specifically, digital navigators that are in community, multicultural, multilingual, that provide culturally specific training and are able to connect with people because they are trusted members of their communities. This important feedback influenced the design of our inaugural Digital Inclusion Fund initiative to create this grant opportunity, whereby we not only utilized existing data, but also engaged in intentional and robust outreach during the grant design phase and further fused elements of participatory grant making ideals and principles into this funding opportunity. Next slide, please. Thank you. Participatory grant making aligns with Council's equity goals. And I will say I devoted a significant amount of my time to ensure that we were engaging with the community. We held 2 comprehensive community listening sessions as the grant is in development, ensured an intentional outreach process in order to incorporate voices from community most impacted by the digital divide. The community listening sessions were not only a way to incorporate community voices into this grant opportunity, but also as a way for us to bring community along in this process so that they would be prepared to apply once the grant application opened. This is important, particularly for emerging nonprofit and volunteer-led organizations, those that do not have grant writers on staff or the resources to engage a professional grant writer on their behalf. And we held a total of 6 virtual office hours in order to ensure everyone had an opportunity to ask questions once the grant application had been released, or in the event they were unable to attend our listening sessions. In addition to the listening sessions and office hours, email outreach was sent to all 631 members of the Digital Inclusion Network, to all Prosper Portland Inclusive Business Resource Network members, plus the BIPOC and Tech cohort members. Additionally, I conducted strategic outreach to an additional 56 community-based organizations representative of prioritized communities and community leaders via telephone, personalized emails, as well as personal meetings. I will say a total of 45 hours spent speaking to community members, either on the phone or holding a personal meeting about this grant opportunity. That ultimately led to 3,239 total views on our Office for Community Technology website. Next slide, please. So we received 11 grant applications totaling $950,000 in grant funding requests. Then when it came time to make the difficult decision about which groups to fund, we engaged in participatory grant making. The Digital Inclusion Fund grant opportunity incorporated this component as a human-centered approach to grant making, one that aims to shift traditional power dynamics by shifting grant-making decisions to communities and those most affected by a social issue. The selection committee panelists represented our communities: persons with disabilities, Latinx, African immigrant refugee, people with an interest in digital equity, people that serve community in this work, and none had professional grant-making experience. However, each expressed an interest or had personal lived experience of the digital inclusion needs of their respective community. Each member attended an orientation, which included a primer on implicit and explicit bias in grant making, and were tasked with reviewing and scoring each grant application utilizing the grant program's criteria. They participated in a final committee meeting to discuss individual evaluations and ultimately select which applicants to fund. Decisions were made via robust deliberation in order to reach consensus. And our result, the committee selected our 3 grantee organizations. Before I introduce our grantees, I'd like to pause here to see if there are any questions so far. If not, I'm very, very pleased to invite Lakita, Sabrina, and Carmen to share a little bit about their proposed Digital Navigator projects. Lakita Lanford is Executive Director of Afro Village. Sabrina Wilson is Executive Director of Rosewood Initiative. And Carmen Castro is Executive Director of Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. Without further ado, please, Lakita.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Hey, Lakita, could we take the screen down so that we could see our speakers? Thank you.
There we go. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name is Lakita Lanford. It's been a while since I've been able to speak before you all, and I am very excited about this opportunity with this pilot project. A little bit about the Afro Village. I'm just gonna read some notes that I took here to deliver to you guys today. The Afro Village is more than a physical place, it's a movement. Rooted in the vision of Portland community member and activist Lakita, myself, also known as Q, the movement fosters dignity, equity, and sustainability in Portland's Black and Brown communities while focusing on women and those experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. The movement acknowledges the reality that African Americans are disparately impacted by the lack of affordable housing and access to critical services, making up 7% of county's overall population while compressing 16 of its unhoused population. And those numbers were thought of in 2019, 2020. In response, the movement provides safety and healing spaces, direct care, and a variety of critical services, including food, hygiene, shelter, community spaces. The movement also works to address the systematic barriers that housing, food, and economic opportunities less accessible to Black and Brown communities through innovation, sustainability solutions. Together with our partners, we spark creative ideas and envision alternative housing models focused on ownership, equity, and racial justice. It's been a huge journey to get to this place with the Afro Village and to be supporting those who have been unhoused throughout this pandemic and prior before. Today, with this opportunity and the grant funding that the Afro Village has received, I'd like to share with y'all about our pilot project, and it's called Hook a Neighbor Up. The project supported by this funding is multifaceted. The project will act as a wraparound service for the Afro Village, includes providing hardware, connectivity, technology training, and community leadership. In part 2, developing a cohort Afro Village digital navigators through Train the Trainer with the goal of creating supportive peer-to-peer network that reaches people in the community who have not been served by other programs. Our program goals will be to develop with our recent funding also that was going to also help and coincide with this funding from the Oregon Health Authority to build capacity with our team to be able to create that space that we've been longing for the last 2 years. And this will just bring the community, the Afro Village Community Digital Navigating Program will be that larger program wraparound services that our organization has been waiting to be able to do for our community. With this funding, we're just really excited to be able to provide space for our community as we do without having the resources to be able to train our community so that they could be able to look for, housing, so they can be able to create, look for jobs, look for, just be able to be connected. So I look forward to continuing to build a relationship with the Office for Community Technology. Rebecca and Elena have been great with pulling us together in a short amount of time. It's just been like so amazing to have this opportunity and to be able to speak to you guys today about what the Afro Village has been up to, what the Afro Village is presently going to be doing, and the future of this pilot program. So thank you guys so much for funding for funding the office so that we can be able to have this opportunity. Just a little nervous today, y'all. It's been a lot going on. It's so good to see y'all, Mayor, Joanne. Just so good to see y'all. It really is.
We really appreciate your being here. Commissioner Hardesty has a comment or a question.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say publicly just how proud I am of the work that Laquita has done with the Afro Village, and I am thrilled that she's finally getting some resources from the city of Portland to invest in this really important work. So you have no reason to be nervous, but I'm so glad to see you here in the house. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing what comes out of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to pass the mic over to Ms. Sabrina with the Rosewood Initiative.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sabrina Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of the Rosewood Initiative. And first I have to say, I'm so happy to be sharing this space with Laquita because she is awesome, doing amazing work. Okay, so my spiel. The Rosewood Initiative is a place-based nonprofit organization. We're out in Outer East Portland, and we support community-driven solutions for a healthier neighborhood. So we pull together and work collaboratively with nonprofit organizations and government agencies, creating a true community hub complete with sustainable solutions that meet the immediate needs of our neighbors while also working upstream to build solutions that address root causes. We really work to build the capacity of our neighbors within our 3 community-informed areas of focus, which include neighborhood community building, economic opportunity, and health and wellness. Our involvement in digital equity and inclusion really grew in COVID-19 in response to COVID-19, where we partnered with the city of Portland to distribute nearly 600 digital devices and over 1,000 internet assistance cards. We did this with our existing program participants, as well as through our local partnerships with Human Solution, their women's shelters, our neighboring Sun schools, and a couple organizations such as Youth and Portland Refugee Support Group. We then needed to take the next step, not only provide these devices, but we worked alongside Metro East Community Media to design and to pilot a digital Navigator program to address the digital divide. We trained 4 community leaders and hosted listening sessions to understand the digital training needs, which informed the Welcome to Computers trainings. We moved to making our team available for more informal digital skills training and tech support for community members. Out of that initial work, we really saw the benefit of, our staff being trained to support community members, as well as the mobile devices like iPads, as opposed to before pre-COVID, we had desktop computers, and how that really supported community members who were mobile in their daily lives. So with this Digital Navigator program and being a part of this project, we really want to deepen our partnership with Metro East Community Media by offering in-person weekly programming for about 3 months. We're going to do this in multiple languages for multiple skill levels. For example, we currently work with the Black community, Nepali speaking, Rohingya speaking, and Spanish speaking communities. And we are going to be including those who have never used a computer in the past. After we do this initial course, we want to continue to build participant skills through a monthly digital literacy club. So utilizing our physical space that we take up in outer East Portland, we're moving towards a community hub. And we really want to have that digital literacy club hosted at Rosewood with our trained navigators. This will provide a space for participants to problem solve, ask questions as they continue to develop their skills. Just reiterating, what Laquita said, Rosewood, we're really happy to be a part of this. It started as an initial need in COVID-19 in response as everyone or most people were pivoting digitally. And so we're really happy to be taking this next step in our work and especially for the outer East Portland community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Wheeler, City Council members. I am Carmen Castro, the Executive Director of Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, and very happy to be here with all of you. And as you may guess, our, I wouldn't say angle necessarily, but our side is more business oriented. The Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber has been around since 1994, serving small and micro businesses. And during this, and we've provided one-on-one services for small businesses from starting to growing to expansion. So since the last 2 years, we've noticed that our businesses, we were already counseling businesses on expanding their online presence as they grew and they got started. But the pandemic really laid bare the fact that so many of our community, our small and micro businesses, really didn't know how to do this. And so the chamber started a vigorous project. We are passionate in making sure that our businesses have the advantages and have the additional presence in order to, particularly in the last couple of years, to keep their doors open. So with some funding, from Business Oregon, we stood up a program and built 170 websites for Hispanic and other minority businesses, which is followed by training. So this opportunity expands that. It provides very dedicated services. We are thrilled to have this opportunity to follow those services and reach more businesses. And we will do so with a bilingual, bicultural navigator. So I'll tell you a little bit more about what our program will do, because it is essential for business to thrive and even just remain open to have access to clients in a digital manner. So this program in particular will have a navigator that will be dedicated to the effort of answering questions, directing to sources. We will also have a list of those resources available that we'll be able to share with other communities that would like them. We will have workshops that will expand digital knowledge and be able to answer questions as well. We have learned a lot the last 2 years of what folks need. In particular in the Hispanic community, many of the business owners do their business on the phone. Everyone has a phone, but very few have hardware, laptops, or any kind in order to research a site, to put in a request for funding or any of those matters, even sending an email and putting in an attachment in. So you can see that this is something that is very much needed for in order to even to bring the small business owners to a starting level, let alone they may be behind the starting line in order to have their goods and services being present and seen by potential clients. We will have the one-on-one instruction, and the Hispanic Chamber has a location where we have desktops and as well as a few laptops have been donated to us so folks can do one-on-one. We know that learners come in the variety, shapes, and flavors and modes of learning. So some people are visual learning, some people need to do it and be helped on a very caring way. So we will have this available so people can come and feel welcome and comfortable to do that. And additionally, what we will be doing will include a toolkit. So we will have a 20,000 to distribute in a very intentional way for folks that are needing hardware or software to conduct their businesses. So At the end of the project, we'll be doing surveys to see what people wanted, how it went. We will be able to provide quality data so we can grow this program, because I have no doubt that you will see the value of all these services that we'll be providing. We'll be able to analyze for trends, future needs, so that you'll be informed and you'll be able to support in the future the expansion of this program. So I am confident that you will find that the work that we provide will be useful to the community, and it will indeed, it's something that we need more of, not only for small businesses, for the community in general. So I'm very happy to have this new partnership, and I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you to all of you that are considering this, and thank you to Lena and to her office, to Rebecca. We truly appreciate your trust in the Hispanic Chamber. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Laquita, Sabrina, and Carmen. Any questions for our community members before I hand it off to David? Okay, not seeing any. I'd like to welcome David Harden. He's the External Affairs Manager at Comcast, to talk a little bit about our collaboration.
Awesome, thank you. I would like to just say good afternoon to everybody, and good afternoon, Mayor, good afternoon, Council. I've got some remarks that we prepared, and we're really excited about this partnership. So I will go ahead and get started. So we've been working with the Digital Inclusion Network for several years, and we are excited about how these connections led us to this unique partnership. At Comcast, we're committed to creating positive change in a more equitable society and powering a future of unlimited possibilities. We're proud to partner with the city's Office for Community Technology and the Digital Inclusion Network to help close the opportunity gap and to work with community-based organizations in new ways, especially with this pilot grant program. On the ground floor of this public-private partnership, we leaned on the committee established by the Office of Community Technology and their criteria for rewarding applicants to help us select an additional organization which our funding will support. Our dollars will go to fund the United Congolese Community of Oregon and their digital Navigator pilot programs that will help community members with some of the hurdles that stand in the way of a rich digital experience. We are also excited about the plan to work in concert as a cohort with all of these organizations selected to share best practices and to discover new opportunities. We know that connectivity to the internet is important, but that it takes more than access to make meaningful and equitable impact. This aligns with our continuing work of putting internet, technology, and resources in the hands of more people and those that perhaps need it most. Our partnership with the community includes celebrating over 10 years of internet essentials in our backyard, a low-cost, high-speed internet offering that brings affordable internet to income-constrained households. It also includes Lyft zones, such as the Montevilla and East Portland community centers, where we have worked with leaders to create free, high-capacity Wi-Fi locations that our neighbors can access. Our Internet Essentials Partnership Program has allowed us to work closely with the OCC so that they can offer a finite number of households broadband access without direct cost to the recipients. And now that work also includes the new Digital Navigator pilot program. So on behalf of Comcast, I would like to thank the City of Portland, the Office for Community Technology, and the Digital Inclusion Network as we continue to inspire what's next in our local community. So thank you everybody for allowing us to be here, and we're excited to see what this public-private partnership will bring.
Thank you, David. So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Very good, colleagues. Any questions? And Megan, at this time, can I also ask, do we have any public testimony on this ordinance?
We do.
All right. How many folks do we have signed up?
4 have signed up. I believe 3 are on the call.
All right, why don't we do this? Could we 3 minutes each, name for the record, please? And Commissioner Rubio, at this point, for the next half hour or so, I'll turn the gavel over to you. Thank you for doing that.
The first 3 individuals are Peter Newbegin, Edgar Navas, and Juan Barazara. It looks like Peter is not here, so we'll go with Edgar, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you again for having me. I was not that long ago, just a few weeks ago, but just wanted to be here again in support of this initiatives. We've been working with the Director Perez and her wonderful staff, and also with some of the people you're funding. And again, just want to reiterate the importance of the Digital Inclusion Fund. Initiatives like this are what's going to propel our communities into the 21st century. And even though you may be thinking it's 2022, yes, our businesses are still not included in 2022. We just discovered that throughout the pandemic, looking at how Black and brown businesses were decimated at a much larger rate than any other ethnicity, not only here in the state of Oregon, but nationwide. Now, why is that? Because again, we're not included. We're not in the game. So companies like mine, organizations like the Hispanic Chamber, the Black American Chamber, et cetera, we've been working on tirelessly for not only this past couple of years, but in our case, we've been working for 7-8 years with the community to trying to breach that gap on the digital inclusion, which that gap in the past couple of years just widened even more. So all the work that we've been doing for almost a decade, not only it just vanquished, it just exacerbated the problem. Again, if we want to really talk about economic prosperity for all, this is important that we just don't see initiatives like this funding as a one-off or just as a small component of your economic development plan, but more as a foundation for the future. If we really want to talk about equity and inclusion, and I'm talking about economic inclusion for all, for our communities, the ones that have been left behind, and are getting left even more behind right now, what we want to do is just propel them. It's going to be a mammoth and monumental task. It's not going to be easy, and that's why we're here. We need you. We can't do it alone. We've been putting this on our own time, on our own dime for quite some time. And it's time for us to say, as city, we actually need you. We're begging for help. Our communities just cannot be left behind anymore. And we just need to assist them, by providing them with the tools and the training on how to utilize those tools. So again, we're not here to asking for handouts. We're not asking for just free things. We're just asking, for your tools and your work, just so we can go and keep helping. And that help is just going to remunerate, and it's going to propel us, into an era of economic prosperity for all. Finally, not just for the ones that have. And please, so one more time, I wanted to thank you so much for the 3 minutes. I wish I could speak longer, but that's what I have. Thank you so much.
Next is Juan Barraza.
Good afternoon. I'm Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners Rubio, Harris, T, and Maps. My name is Juan Barraza. I'm the co-founder of Latino Founders. We're a professional organization focused on supporting the next generation of Latinx entrepreneurs, creating scalable startups in the direct-to-consumer, manufacturing, clean tech, and technology sectors. I'm here just to provide support to the agenda item 486, the Digital Inclusion Fund. The digital divide is often defined as the gap between those who have access and no access to internet. During the last 24 months, we have seen BIPOC businesses close their front doors for the lack of access to technology, digital points of sales to redirect their foot traffic from their storefront to their business website. Technology is moving at the speed of light, and without the support that the Digital Inclusion Fund will provide, people will be in our community will be left further behind. The Digital Inclusion Fund is critical, and it will allow to the creation of programming and wraparound services that meets the needs of our community where they are, to address the current digital inclusion needs that they have, and they're tailored for them. The implementation of the fund will help see the next generation of BIPOC entrepreneurs that will create digital startups in Portland, creating generational wealth in our community. Thank you for your support.
Next is Juan Moreau.
Thank you, council members and everyone else here. My name is Juan Muro, and I am the executive director at Free Geek. Free Geek's reason for existing is to bridge the gap on the digital divide by including everybody in our digital future. A year ago, Free Geek launched its own digital navigation program, and we wanted to achieve the following things. Open up a community center where folks could come in and get connected with a human that would help them. Connect Black, Brown, and our most marginalized communities to technology hardware, digital literacy, tech support, and broadband services. And three, we wanted to create personalized one-on-one training and consultation in different languages. And we did. The program is working. The funding that we are talking about today is a great start to support a pilot across Portland. But there's opportunity to actually make a bigger impact. At Free Geek, we quickly realized that 1.5 digital navigators that we had wasn't enough to support the 1,000% demand increase for technology hardware and one-on-one support. My hope is that through a community approach and with more investment through funding, we can truly expand digital navigation across the entire Portland metro area. Thank you.
And that concludes testimony.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for all that. And thank you for the incredible presentation. It was really, really inspiring. So now I'll ask my council colleagues if there are any questions or any council discussion. No? Seeing none? Okay. If there's no further discussion, Keelan, would you please call the roll?
Should I make a motion to accept the report as presented, Madam President?
This is actually an ordinance.
Oh, okay, good. My bad. Thanks.
Hardesty.
I want to just take a moment to really appreciate just the incredible work that is done by the Office of Technology. I gotta say, a lot has been done, and you're right. A lot was exposed during COVID about the lack of access. I also wanted to take a moment to appreciate David being here on behalf of Comcast, because from the beginning, I've been saying we need cable providers to be partners in this effort. This is not, the city should not be paying the full rate for actually making access available. So I just want to really publicly appreciate you, David, for being a good community partner and actually working with us to figure out where's the best places to make investments. We found out that you couldn't get anything if you did not have access to internet during COVID. And so I appreciate each of you and the work that we will continue to do. But I just have to say it's a drop in a bucket as compared to the need that we have in this community. But what I hope is we will learn from this effort, and we will be able to do something at a much broader scale. Because I think many of the speakers spoke to the fact that there are a lot of people that have no access at all. And what we learned through COVID was that if you didn't have internet, you didn't get access to anything. And so hopefully those are lessons we all keep in our hearts as we move forward. I'm very happy to vote aye on this. And my applause to Commissioner Rubio for the great leadership she's provided to the office, but you've also got a very excellent director who has done incredible work. And so thank you all for being here today. I vote aye.
Maps.
I'd like to thank staff, the grantees, members of the public, and Comcast for today's presentation and testimony. I also want to thank Commissioner Rubio and the Office of Community Technology for their leadership in helping close the digital divide. For these reasons and more, I'm glad to vote aye on this item.
Rubio.
Thank you, Rebecca, Lena, and all the community grantees and community leaders for this great presentation and for being here today. We're very excited and inspired by the work that you're all doing, and it's very clear it's having a huge impact in our community. And to put it bluntly, this work really, really matters to people's lives. These programs make a critical difference in their livelihoods, in their self-determination, and it also works to close the digital gap for communities that would otherwise be left behind. So thank you so much to OCT staff for your extensive community engagement and for being responsive to our community needs and doing so in a culturally responsive way. I'm very happy to vote aye.
Wheeler.
Yeah, obviously this is something I strongly support, and I just want to build on some of the comments that were made earlier during the presentation. And the one that really for me has the most impact is the reality that COVID underscored the immediacy with which we must address the digital divide. And prior to COVID, I would have to point out, even during the beginning phases of COVID, it was not a given that this city council would support these kinds of efforts. In fact, the earliest proposal around the allocation of CARES dollars included funding to close the digital divide, and even the Portland City Council was divided on that matter. The reason I supported it then and the reason I support it now is that what we have learned in the last few years is that without access to technology, our kids do not have access to education and parents do not have access to jobs. It's that simple. And so this is no longer a matter of convenience. This is an absolutely critical, essential component of our community. Digital infrastructure is perhaps the most important infrastructure in our community going forward, and ensuring that our residents have equal access to that critical infrastructure should be no less important than access to transportation resources, access to healthcare, or access to other services, or even housing. And so I think this is a great effort. I'm really pleased, by the way, with our leaders who testified today on not only the passion and vision that they bring to the table, but just brass tacks ability to get stuff done. This is a really, really positive moment for the City Council. And I'm glad that I stand unified with my colleagues that we need to continue to support these investments and expand new investments in digital, spanning the digital divide as well. I vote aye. Thank you.
Great. So the ordinance is adopted. Yay. So Keelan, would you please call the next item? And thank you everyone for coming out today. We're really excited for the projects and we look forward to hearing more updates.
Mr. Video, I think that the next item is at 3 p.m. time certain.
Thank you very much. Yes, so we are recessed until 3 p.m. So we'll take a short break and we'll see you back here then.
Recording stopped.
are going to resume council. And would you please call the next item?
487, accept the Regional Arts and Culture Council 2021 Annual Report to Council.
Thank you. Colleagues, since taking office in 2021, it's been my honor to serve as Portland's Arts and Culture Commissioner. And since then, I've gained a deeper appreciation for arts and culture as a key driver and core part of Portland's identity, both in terms of our culture and our economy. And as a part of this work, my staff and I have taken the keen interest in understanding and strengthening the relationship between the Regional Arts and Culture Council and the City of Portland. There is no Portland without a vibrant arts and culture community. And the city contracts with RAC, as does the county, to ensure that that vibrancy remains. There's no arts organization that has a role like RAC. So the city needs RAC to be accessible and function as well as possible for our artistic professionals, for Portlanders, and for our visitors alike. And as a part of its contract with the City of Portland, RAC is required to present an annual report to the Portland City Council, describing how city funds were spent and identifying the challenges and opportunities facing the local arts community. And today, RAC staff and board, together with grantees and partners, will report their outcomes for their 2021 year with the city. Their first annual report presented since pre-pandemic, 2018. So to kick off the presentation, I will now introduce an audio of Nathan Ricks, RAC's board chair.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Rubio, members of the Portland City Council. My name is Nathan Ricks. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the chair of the Regional Arts and Culture Council. I've been a proud member of the RAC board for a little over 2 years, and just coming up on completing my first year as chair. I want to thank you first and foremost for the opportunity to present our update for fiscal year 2021. Thank you to the City Arts Program and Commissioner Rubio's office for partnering with us in this work, especially through the challenges over the past 2 years with the COVID-19 pandemic. Like many of the organizations you hear from on a daily basis, we have been deeply impacted by that challenge, but we're proud to report today that we've found opportunity and we've found new ways to serve our community here in the region, of which Portland is a critical place and critical partner, where we've been able to specifically serve struggling artists with a focus on the BIPOC community and artists that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and the challenges with it. I'm proud to introduce to you now Della Ray and Carol Tosh. And Della Ray is the Co-Executive Director and Chief Internal Operations Director. Carol Tosh is the Co-Executive Director and Chief of External Operations. We transitioned to a co-executive leadership model last year and are looking to sustain that this year and beyond. We have found so far that having two executive directors is much better than simply one, and have even been looked to by some national arts organizations and others here in the Portland community about how we've started to implement this work, and encourage you and anybody listening to follow along the RAC blog for some of the lessons we've learned along the way. We continue, to want to partner with you all and with our other jurisdictions to lead by example in our equity work within the organization, and also how we look at grants and how we look at public art, and really want to be champions of this work and leaders, just as we take that servant leadership posture. And so with that, I will pass it over to Carol and Della and the team to brief you on our update for fiscal year 2021. Thank you, and we look forward to coming back and sharing with you all of the great work we do in 2022. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Waiting for our slides to start. That was Nathan. Wonderful. My name is Carol Tat. I want to thank Nathan for digging deep into the history of the name and pronouncing it with its Prussian pronunciation, which is Tosh. But I am Carol Tatch, and I am the co-executive director and chief for external operations for the Regional Arts and Culture Council. I am an African-American woman wearing glasses, and I have a flowered shirt on, and I have longish sister-locked hair. It is a joy to be present with you today. Let me begin by saying thank you and good afternoon, Mayor Fuller, and thank you for the lovely introduction that speaks to RAC's unique placement in the Portland metro region and our intentional work in the community, Commissioner Rubio. We send greetings to each of the commissioners and their staff. The Regional Arts and Culture Council is a 501c3 organization with a collaborative team who provides arts and culture services to the city of Portland through an intergovernmental agreement for this region. This includes public art, grants and community reinvestment, arts education, strategic planning, professional development, and advocacy and engagement in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties and Metro. We last presented to you in July 2021 as we gathered in recognition and promotion of the newly created multi-year contract that we now hold with the City of Portland. As we look back upon nearly 50 years of serving the community, first as the Metropolitan's Arts Commission and then as RAC from 1995, we understand that we sit at a very critical set of intersections: art and placemaking and community, economic prosperity and economic invisibility, and social justice and civic unrest, amongst other critical intersectionalities. COVID-19 widened all perceptible gaps and has exposed others. We at RAC are looking into the gaps to create the spaces where the story changes to support and elevate art and creativity as economic drivers, essential to community building, safety, and healing. RAC's work is values-based. You will hear more about our mission, vision, and values shortly. Values-based work demands engagement and outcomes. As we report to you today, you will hear about both and so much more. There is intrinsic value in funding artists and creatives from local funding sources to ensure that local spaces are art active. We see our work as an investment in the community. It is not just about funding artists to be artists, it is about funding the community to build community. Investing in our community of creatives will bring greater rewards for each of us.
Hello. Okay. Hello, my name is Della Ray. I am the co-executive director and chief of internal operations. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman and I have on a black shirt with glasses, and my background is Van Gogh iris. The Regional Arts and Culture Council sits at the intersection of art and community and social justice. Our mission to enrich communities through arts and culture is to achieve daily through funding initiatives, public art engagement and installation, advocacy and engagement, and ensuring that we are careful stewards of city, county, state, and federal dollars. Our work is dedicated to being aligned with equity, crosses boundaries, and creates networks for connecting for art's sake. Individuals and organizations make this work possible through their efforts and community-grounded initiatives. We say we connect artists and creatives to opportunity and access. Access to what, you ask? Access to each other, professional development activities, community and activity engagement, and advocacy engagement. Through our work, we are meeting and exceeding equity and access targets that are aligned and in some cases are beyond the city of Portland's. This speaks to RAC's commitment to our core values: accessibility, advocacy, equity, diversity, community, and innovation. Meeting our own targets ensures that we are meeting and exceeding external requirements. Within our AAC presented to the city and commissioners, we speak to the ways that we have completed our work in service to our contract. You will see highlights at work here. You will also see the other ways that RAC has leaned into and lead opportunities to address needs of this community during fiscal year 2021. A huge highlight was the over $17 million from CARES that RAC redistributed to our heavily impacted artists, creatives, and arts-serving organizations and venues. Over 15 million was funding direct to RAC from the federal government for this purpose. We assisted not just COP affected entities, but also other communities. Now, before I get into our presentation and our fiscal work year 2021, let me introduce you to our team. Slide, please. Slide, please. And this is our board of directors. Slide, please. I wanted to start by reminding you of our mission and core values, which have grown from their roots from when RAC first grew out of an independent 501 out into an independent 501c3 organization in 1995. RAC's mission is broad: to enrich our communities through arts and culture, which has allowed RAC to explore ways of using arts and culture as powerful tools for addressing a wide variety of community challenges and concerns. We advocate, fund, listen, learn, and lean in, leveraging and investing private and public dollars to create a thriving region powered by creativity with arts and culture in every neighborhood. We advocate for equity, access, and inclusion for arts and culture in our communities. We educate and inform our community through engagement and stories. We create space for others to have place and voice at the community's table. We provide resources, support, and development opportunities, ensuring growth and sustainability for our creative ecosystem, including arts organizations and school districts. Finally, we cultivate long-lasting public-private relationships, shaping arts and culture in our community. With that, I want to introduce you to our first guest this afternoon, Jenny Stadler. She is the Executive Director of Fame Academy. Her work centers the work of RAC and the City of Portland in creating equity through access and opportunity of the arts. Jenny has worked in executive leadership and consulting in the arts and education for the last 20 years. She joined Fame as the Executive Director in September of 2017, where she works to build equitable arts opportunities for people with disabilities in the Portland metro region and beyond. Jenny received her PhD in Human Development from Boston University in 2001. She currently serves on the board of the Cultural Advocacy Coalition of Oregon and sings with and serves on the board of the Choral Arts Ensemble of Portland. Jenny has 2 grown children, lives with chronic illness, compulsively knits, and frequently wishes one of her dogs was a cat.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here today, and thanks to the Regional Arts and Culture Council for having me. I'm Jenny. I'm the Executive Director of Fame Academy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white woman wearing blue glasses and a blue dress. Fame Academy is an arts and education organization for adults with developmental disabilities. We're a multidisciplinary art school with over 120 students, a vibrant community of artists, and a high caliber performance program. We're also the grateful recipients of RAC GOS funding, without which we would not have thrived through the pandemic. At Fame, we challenge our musicians, our actors, our writers, and our visual artists to push themselves towards excellence. And we at Fame promote, educate, and most importantly, we see those artists. People with disabilities, especially developmental disabilities, are at the fringes of our community and culture. At Fame, we amplify the voices of people with disabilities, and we create opportunities to share those stories. But we need more places for those voices to be heard and those stories to be told. For this reason, for the last 4 years, thanks to some seed money from RAC, we've challenged the local arts community to create more spaces for our artists to get engaged. Through our partnership program, we've produced a rock opera with the Portland Opera, Oregon Ballet Theater teaches a class once a week at FAME, even through the pandemic. And last night, 2 FAME animators had films premiering with Artist Repertory Theater's Mercury Festival, just at Pioneer Courthouse Square. I am grateful to these and all of our partners for opening their doors. They are champions. But it's not enough. While many have stepped up over the last few years when it comes to equity work, those of us with disabilities are still too often being left out of EDI conversations or being acknowledged as an afterthought or a footnote. For example, multiple venues here in Portland still have stages that are not wheelchair accessible, and venue owners are reluctant to make simple changes because the city permitting processes don't make anything simple. There's also a one and done attitude about disability. I see organizations having one wheelchair on stage for a single production, or just one strangely scheduled hybrid performance, or across the board, in and outside of the arts, I see organizations having only one conversation about disability in their planning work, and then they check the disability checkbox. Done. Yes, it's getting better, but yes, we need more. I encourage you, as leaders of this city, to make sure you're thinking about who is and isn't being heard from during your EDI work. Do not leave disability off the table when you talk about spaces and places. It's estimated that more than 20% of people in Oregon experience disability or chronic illness. And I want to tell you that number is growing, thanks to the huge increases in numbers of young people being diagnosed with autism and the continued impacts of long COVID. As we continue our pandemic recovery, we can't go back to the way things used to be. We have to continue to move forward to counter ableism. People with disabilities need to be seen and welcome and heard and included in the arts and elsewhere. Thank you. Thanks to RAC for all you do, and thank you for having me here today.
Next slide, please. Thank you very much, Jenny, for joining us today. Your words speaking to access and engagement and thinking about the need to diversify our work leads us into the conversation about RAC's strategic framework, which was adopted in June of 2020, authorized by our board and team. It is guiding our work of our nonprofit through fiscal year 2023 with high-level goals that continue to guide our work. For fiscal year 2021, this guiding framework launched us into a year of responsiveness and deeper community engagement. By centering our work on racial equity and deep community engagement, we have been able to be thoughtful and agile in our efforts to meet rapidly changing community needs. We started with the What's Next survey, launched in fall of 2020, and a convening of a people of color directed focus group to hear and engage with what our community of artists, creatives, and art-serving organizations needed most as we were facing the unknown times of the pandemic onset and community unrest around social injustice and the murders of Black and Brown people. COVID-19 exposed a glaring rip in the inequities of our daily lives and widened the disparities that are inherent in a system of injustice. Next slide, please. RAC's core values, as Della referred to earlier, sit in the space of accessibility, innovation, community, diversity, equity, and advocacy. We center the needs of the Portland Metro and Pacific Northwest regions, where we are providers of services to our creative community. This is how we are able to do our work. We are guided by what the community says that it needs. We facilitated multiple convenings annually, including over 300 last year, both online, hybrid, and in person on the horizon. We leveraged the city funding with local and outside partners to ensure that we have more to give back to the community. We ensure that students in Portland's 6 school districts have access to artistic expression within their curriculums through the Arts Education and Access Oversight Fund and our work with the committee. We enhance all of Portland and Multnomah County through our public art program. Next slide, please. Our highlights for fiscal year 2021. Our monuments conversation. The Public Art Committee, which is a community-led committee, helped to shape our monuments conversation, equity and inclusion for the community's future conversations around who and what is memorialized. RAC dealt with failed monuments, removed monuments in danger of being damaged, and drafted recommendations from the community-led Public Art Committee to help guide the city on next steps reviewing and updating policies through an anti-racist lens. Our COVID relief funding was the redistribution of City of Portland CARES funding. RAC conducted over 300 artists and community-centered workshops and trainings. We had representation on RAC committees of 86% of our community review panelists and 72% of our public art panelists who identified as Asian, Black, Latinx, multiracial, Native American or Indigenous or Pacific Islander. RAC serves communities throughout Portland and made intentional efforts and advancement in Asian, Black, Latinx, multiracial, Native American and Indigenous, and Pacific Islander communities, and those who meet at the intersection of ethnicity and race who are also immigrant, refugee, homeless or houseless, LGBTQIA+, and or persons with disabilities. RAC distributed over $1.4 million in City of Portland funding and grants to artists and creatives, with over $950,000 going to non-arts education and access fund arts organizations. Next slide, please. I hope everyone is taking the opportunity to also enjoy the art that we're presenting here. Each piece is part of our public art program, and have some fun taking a look at it. Highlights continued for the City of Portland. 88% of the artists who receive funding from the 2% for Art program identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. We have installations in publicly accessible venues such as the Portland Building and the Vanport Building, where we engage in the public in critical conversations around that art. We partnered with the Portland Bureau of Transportation and 6 Black-led community organizations for the Black Portland Matters Art and Placemaking Initiative. And we exceeded the goals related to equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. And we will continue to center our racial equity lens as we work with artists and organizations to create a more diverse art space within all of the Portland metro communities. We advocated for and distributed nearly $20 million in federal CARES funding from both the City of Portland and the State of Oregon. These dollars are allocated into our local economy as COVID-19 continues to shake our communities from within. Next slide, please. In our focus on community, we make sure that our programs and services are accessible to all communities. In fact, when we do our FY22 update, you'll see how we have increased our access services to be even more relevant to our community today. We focus on artists, creative students, teachers, and public audiences that have been marginalized by systems and institutions and who are underrepresented within the arts and culture community. RAC helped advocate for and created one-time and sustainable funding opportunities to keep local creatives able to meet their basic needs and to fund creative expression. In FY21, we transitioned to offer emergency grants to artists and creative workers from program asset allocations and individual giving. That we've had multiple emergency grants of $500 per individual, over $200,000 total, including grants to over 300 individuals residing in the City of Portland. Over a third of those supported self-identify as Asian, Black, Latinx, multiracial, Native American, and or are a Pacific Islander. We increased the diversity of the community grant and public arts panels, investing decision-making responsibilities in the community, including participants who also self-identify as Asian, Black, Latinx, multiracial, Native American, Pacific Islander, and those with other backgrounds that have been mentioned before. We kept the lines of communication open during the unfolding pandemic to bring artists and creatives to the table for continued engagement activities with a focus on underrepresented communities. Their participation enabled us to meet and exceed our contracted metric responsibilities even during this challenging time. I will give you 2 examples of the 335 engagements that we had. We had 2 Instagram live presentations on our new Make, Learn, Build grant making program with a total views of over 1,300. And we had implicit bias training for our community reviewers. 3 pivotal community conversations that we have had were around capacity building and all group cohort conversation, our virtual Black artists community conversation, and design as protest, installation and community walk as part of the Vanport Festival. Next slide, please. I would love to introduce Sharita Town. We have a video that we will play from her. She is currently a lead artist with the Black Portland Matters Art and Placemaking Initiative projects with the Albina Vision Trust, Soul District, and SEI, the Kenton Otis Memorial Project, and Albina Queens. Sharita has been an artist in residence with the Hobolt neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Sharita Town. These are projects from the Black Portland Matters Art and Placemaking Project Initiative and the Murals program. Over the past year, I've gotten to do things like celebrate Black educators in public. I've gotten to celebrate Black femmes, femininity, non-binary folks in Northeast Portland alongside community organizations like Imagine Black. I've gotten to paint murals that celebrate Blackness, indigeneity, Black indigeneity in the region, Black families and survivance. I've gotten to celebrate Black migration in gentrifying neighborhoods and kind of illuminate that message even in the night. I've gotten to paint alongside young people to celebrate self-care, community care, and the harvest and magnitude that we hold in each other in the arts. And I've also gotten to celebrate the sites where we seek justice and celebrate Black family love and intergenerational healing and Black imagination. This is something that I'm doing right now, which is putting gold cracks in the street where Keaton Otis was killed by Portland police 12 years ago. We had several rounds of community visioning that REC supported. So both celebrating this site of loss and also places like Forest Park that gave him life. So that's what I'm doing right now. And REC has been so helpful, and I hope that you support them and support them even more. You know, we're all doing so much right now in these areas, and just appreciate the recognition and support out here in these streets. So thank you very much.
Slide 15, please.
Excuse me, Madam President.
Yes.
May I?
Commissioner Hardesty, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. I'm sorry, what was the artist's name that just spoke?
Sharita Town.
I want to thank you for your work. I met Pete Notice's dad, Fred Bryant, on the very worst day of his life. And is anyone else hearing like a wind tunnel?
Yes.
Oh, good. Can we fix the wind tunnel, please?
Sounds like an ocean wave.
Yes, it does. I wish there was an ocean waves close by, but no joy. I will pause for a moment and see if we could. Are you hearing this in the council chambers as well? No. It's only online. Well, I can speak up because, you know, this is really important. As I was stating, I met Keaton Otis the day his son was killed. And if anybody who knew, I'm sorry, I met Fred Bryant the day that Keaton Otis was killed. And anyone who knew Fred Bryant knew that the next month he was standing on that corner where you are creating your project. Holding a vigil for his son. And I do believe it is still the longest ongoing vigil that takes place every month at 6 p.m. Where Keaton Otis lost his life. And this is something I did religiously until I got a little busy with my day job and was unable to be consistently there. But I can't tell you how much it means to have a remembrance on that corner that both represents Keaton and his dad. And what a beautiful artist, and how wonderful you've created so much art. And I knew that they were intentionally looking for a community artist to create this. So I just want to say thank you. I did not want that moment to pass. without really thinking about how long ago that was. And the fact that, this is something that the community still lives with. And we can't just pretend that these things haven't happened and they haven't had a long-term impact on community members. So my apologies, Madam President, if I'm getting us off track, but I could not let that go without acknowledging that that bullet killed both Keith Notice and his dad, because his dad was on his way back to health. And I just think his body was too weak because of his advocacy for his son. So I'll stop.
Thank you, Commissioner. It was important to say. Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Carol.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mario. Slide 15, please. And thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. We hope art to live in our memory. Great. City of Portland funding. So this is our opportunity to tell you about what we've done with the dollars that you've given us. So from the Portland General Fund, we received 15% of our total budget for fiscal year 21, which was almost $4 million. The 2% for art came in at just under $500,000. And then the dollars that we received through the Arts Education and Access Fund was at $2.3 million. Next slide, please. From our audited financial statements for our revenue, this is RAC's program revenue, where our dollars come from in order to get them back out into the community. And then the City of Portland's portion is also pulled out in that purple space. You can see that the CARES relief funding made up which was a way and something we look.
Excuse me, Carol. I'm hearing you fade in and out. I don't know what's happening inside City Council chambers, but being on the phone, your voice is coming in and out.
Okay, I'm actually on my computer, and what I can tell you is that the whooshing sound is getting much louder on my end. So I don't know if that's affecting hearing, but I will speak up. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Slide 17, please. Slide 17 is an example of our program expenses for fiscal year 21, again, from our audited financial statements, where we are pulling our dollars that we put back out into the community. Federal programs, of course, will match the funding that we received from through CARES funding. And you can see the other ways that we allocate out our funding for the work that we do for. Slide 18, please. Next slide, please. Grants and service to our community. In terms of program delivery and expenses, we invested over 90%, actually about 94% of our budget in grants and services for artists and arts organizations. We will shortly share a grant recipient highlight with you. Our general operations support is offered through the Arts Education and Access Fund to arts-focused nonprofits demonstrating artistic merit that provide a service to our community and provide a wide range of high-quality arts programs to the public, while also demonstrating administrative and fiscal competence. We distributed 91%, which is taxpayer money into the community of the net funds, exceeding the target of 80 to 90%. Our net annual arts education and access income tax funds provided to RAC after education coordination are distributed through equity-focused grants, which was 9% of an unnamed targeted goal. We surpassed our prior year stated goals. Due to the increasing number of individual applicants for whom funds from the Arts Education and Access Income Tax Fund could not be used, this number best represents the current trends and opportunities that we have. Slide 19, please. We will shortly have a presentation from two of our guest speakers, Brian Parham, who is the founder of Rock Dojo, and Sansam Sierra, who is a co-founder and managing artistic director for Theater Diaspora.
Hi everyone, my name is Brian Parham and I'm the co-founder and co-creator of the Rock Dojo, Get a Black Belt in Rock.
As you can see, I'm dressed in my gi because my students know me as the Guitar Sensei. Since 2014, I've taught more than 1,000 elementary school students how to rock on the guitar in our award-winning after-school program. In fact, my mission is to provide every elementary school student with the opportunity to play guitar by 2025. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to deliver testimony on behalf of my favorite organization, the Regional Arts and Cultural Council. I get excited just saying that name because I love this organization, and here's why. In 2017, I won a project grant. I ended up partnering with Bienestar de la Familia to deliver a free rock guitar workshop for the children of immigrant and refugee families. We actually ended up making a documentary film that showed the journey of these students learning to play the guitar. Amazingly, one of those students became the first member of her family to attend college. And more incredibly, she actually won a full scholarship for music to do so. You know, that would have never happened without this free workshop. And I could not have delivered the workshop without the funding from the Regional Arts and Cultural Council. Fast forward to 2021, and I won a Make, Learn, Build grant. I actually studied arranging and composing at Berklee Online. I used those skills to write my first album, Let Me Hear Your Fingers Sing at the Rock Dojo. The concept behind this album was to take high energy rock music, think Kiss, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and apply it to inspiring, funny lyrics that empower children through music education. And fast forward to today, I was fortunate enough in 2022 to win a round 4 Make, Learn, Build grant. And I'm so over the top energetic because I'm getting ready to deliver a free rock guitar concert for kids at 5:30 today. So I'll be leaving my house really soon. This would never have been possible without the funding from RAC. It paid for 8 months of rehearsals with a group of musicians. It actually paid for me to record and write the backing tracks that we're going to use to play along with. And it's funding everybody's ticket, so nobody has to pay. And most importantly, it's funding filming of the concert, so students who actually can't make it will still have accessibility, will still be able to see the concert through a live stream of the show itself. So I want to thank so much for this opportunity. I love the Regional Arts and Cultural Council. They make a tremendous impact in the Portland arts community. RAC rocks. Thank you so much for your time.
Is Samson next?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Samson Seeroth. I'm one of the co-founders and the managing artistic directors of Theater Diaspora. As a nonprofit theater company that serves the Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian communities, we would not be in business today if we didn't have the support of the Regional Arts and Culture Council. We received our 501c3 at the end of 2019 when the pandemic first began and all live in-person theater was shut down. But thanks to the Regional Arts and Culture Council, we were able to continue our programming of our inaugural year, which was vital during a time of anti-Asian hate. We were able to hire Asian American and Pacific Islander artists and community members to create multimedia that brought people together to share our stories and, most importantly, to provide hope. And as an individual artist, I cannot name an organization that I've worked with that is not supported by the Regional Arts and Culture Council. It really is integral to the artist community here in Portland.
Thank you very much. Our public art program is an investment in our community. 6% of our total budget in FY21 was used to beautify our community and engage amazing artists and creatives with public art. RAC commissions and maintains a growing public art collection on behalf of both the City of Portland and Multnomah County. There are now more than 2,200 artworks in the collection, thanks in large part to the city and county's 2% for Art ordinances. It was created, this ordinance objective was to create and prioritize placing art within underserved neighborhoods. In FY21, we met and exceeded the goal of 75% with the planning phase for Arrow Heights and Mill Park. Several Black Portland Matters Art and Placemaking Initiative projects and the Vanport Portable Works, which were purchased in the Central City with 88% of the artists identifying as BIPOC and receiving 88% of the funding from this resource. The impact of public art on the community was felt through the ongoing local and national discussions of the role historic monuments play in our public spaces. RAC dealt with failed monuments, including and drafting recommendations from the Public Art Committee to help guide the city on next steps, reviewing and updating policies through an anti-racist lens. Next slide, please. Our arts education program. I want to start this by saying that art is a right and not a privilege. Because of the efforts of the wonderful citizens of the City of Portland, we have the Arts Education and Access Income Tax Fund, which funds arts education in our 6 Portland school districts. These mean that there is equitable access in the Tri-County region. We use a grant from PGE to extend our art look, as well as engage in efforts to heal the split rental school district. We had Arts Education and Access Fund coordination via our City of Portland contract slated activities. We expanded advocacy to include middle schools, that's 6 through 8, and high school, grades 9 through 12, arts educators. And we had professional development from Trauma Informed Oregon, where CEU credits could be earned by participants. The Arts Education and Access Income Tax logo redesign and messaging updated to include public relations, teacher, student, and media engagement in fiscal year 21. Hope you're able to catch it when it was on the news. Next slide, please. We will have a short video from Laura Stribe, who is the Arts Education and Access Fund Oversight Committee Chair and founder of Aura Creative Consulting.
My name is Laura Stribe, and I wear many hats in the arena of arts and arts education. I am the mom of 3 kids who are very creative. I am the founder and executive director of Vibe of Portland, an arts and music educational nonprofit that is dedicated to ensuring quality arts access to kids in under-resourced neighborhoods. I am also the owner of a creative consulting firm that supports artists and creatives, and also nonprofits. And then I volunteer as a member of the city's Arts Education and Access Fund Oversight Committee, currently serving as their chair. I am here on video today to tell you about the impact arts education and arts funding through RAC has made here in Portland. Our nonprofit Vibe was recently awarded a Make, Learn, Build grant from RAC. This funding, along with support from the Oregon Arts Commission and summer enrichment grants, will be going towards a youth and community mural project in Southeast Portland in the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood. This project, titled Lift Youth Voices, is a direct response to the increase in gun violence that our students in Southeast Portland have witnessed over the last year. Our mural is a teaching artist and middle school student collaboration to speak up and speak out through a creative lens. This is for our youngest residents to share their voices about how they want to be heard and how they want our neighborhoods to be better for them. This summer arts project will provide a visually beautiful mural at Southeast 52nd and Flavel, a part of town that is so often overlooked by decision makers in our city. With the compound traumas that our city's children have witnessed over the last several years, RAC's Arts Education Program Manager has worked with Trauma Informed Oregon to provide a series of 4 trainings in trauma-informed supports, specifically for artists and arts educators. These trainings were asked for by Arts Education and Access funded arts educators, and they have been extremely valuable professional development moments for both myself and everyone else who has been able to participate in them. As part of RAC's contract with the city for the Arts Education Access Fund, they are required to provide ongoing professional development for arts education access funded teachers, and this professional development has been invaluable in its timeliness and in responding to the needs that arts educators have. In wearing my hat as a nonprofit director and in my role as part of the Arts Oversight Committee, I have been pleased to see that RAC is making continued investments in arts education and in arts educators. They are feeling seen, heard, and valued by RAC. My hope is that the city sees and recognizes the asset they have in RAC as a partner who has been able to respond quickly with all of its various tools and funding over these last 2 years. I hope that as the city continues to develop its city arts plan with RAC and other stakeholders, that you keep our youngest Portland residents at the forefront of your planning. By continued investment in arts education, you are providing a solid foundation for our next generation to grow up as engaged participants, as performers, as playwrights, artists, arts educators, potential future poet laureates, patrons, audiences, and arts champions that will fuel and support our creative economy well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Our Advocacy and Engagement program. We connected with the community at neighborhood, state, and national legislature levels. We created a RAC-focused Advocacy Day agenda, bringing into focus the needs of our creatives and art-serving organizations. We have continual engagement with our IGA partners as RAC continues to center the needs of the Portland area community and our region as a whole. This enables us to leverage local dollars for community impact and improvement. Coming online in 22, later this year, will be our Advocacy Hub, which will be a community-facing web advocacy engagement tool, of which some of the items may be, if they have not been put into legislation and action before, it would be our Creative Economy Recovery Act, SARA, which is modeled after the WPA. This is an effort to make sure that we have recovery efforts and investments that help put creative workers back to work. We have started our AEP6, which those who read either the City Arts Program Manager's newsletter or our own knows is our way that we are looking at the economic contributions of the arts in over 250 diverse communities and regions across the United States, which is representing all 50 states in the District of Columbia. And we are continuing the engagement with the Arts Education for All Act in partnership with Congresswoman Bonamici and local state legislators, which are advocating for well-rounded education that includes art in every curriculum, as well as advocating for art engagement with those who are justice impacted. Next slide. We have a few calls to action for y'all. Specifically, and right up at the shoot right now is AEP6. We will be launching this very shortly out into the community, where we have the opportunity to feed into the information that we have from AEP5, which showed that our arts industry generated $687 million of economic activity, of which $364 million was spent by arts and culture organizations, with $323 million coming in from event-related expenditures. This is a significant part of our income and our recovery opportunities, and we need to lean into the opportunities we see to support our artistic community in this time. It is now more important than ever to demonstrate that even in the wake of COVID-19 and the resulting economic recession, the arts will provide a significant boost in healing our communities, as well as recharge the economy in America's local communities. AEP6 is that next opportunity. Next slide, please. This is provided with links to the reports that feed into this, including our Advancing Arts and Culture report, which was delivered to all of our commissioners, teams, and staff, and the City Arts Program Manager. It also has overviews, summaries, and references for the items that we've mentioned today. Next slide, please. This slide is to let you know we are better together. We are grateful for the partnership that we have with our neighboring communities and specifically with the City of Portland. Please know that art is a right and not a privilege. And then I will finish with a quote from one of my favorite people in the world, Maya Angelou, which says, "When members of a society wish to secure that society's rich heritage, they cherish their arts and respect their artists. The esteem with which we regard the multiple cultures offered in our country enhances our possibilities for healthy survival and continued social development. Thank you very much from the Regional Arts and Culture Council. My sincere thanks to the entire RAC team, our board of directors, all of our stakeholders in the community, and those who have made our work viable in this space.
Thank you so much, Director Tatch, and thank you for that compelling quote as well at the end to remind us as well. And also want to thank Director Ray, RAC board staff, and partners for this really informative presentation. So now I will turn it over to colleagues to see if there are any questions. Mayor, and then Commissioner Hardesty.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. It was great to hear from some of the artists and get their personal perspective about their relationship with RAC. And once again, I'm pleased to hear that the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. I had a question about some of the more mundane aspects of this fund. Since the city is a significant funder and this is a large expenditure in our general fund account, I had a question. We've been fairly consistent about approximately $4 million. The city of Portland represents a much larger percentage, I think, based on the chart that I saw, than other government partners. Where are we relative to other government partners in terms of our funding of the Regional Arts and Culture Council?
Sorry, I was muted. Other government support is 8%, not including the funding that we receive from the federal government. And then the city of Portland is 25%. So there's a 17% difference between you and the rest of our IGA partners.
Is that combined, the rest of the IGA partners combined? Like how much does Clackamas County put in? How much does Washington County put in? How much does Metro put in? Do you have those numbers available? And if not, you can just send it to me later, but.
Happy to send it to you later. And my question to you is, since all of the numbers we looked at today were referring to a fiscal year ago, would you like current figures or what it made up in FY21?
I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I like 5-year historicals as well as current year. If you have that available, I
absolutely we do.
Probably do in the report. That would actually be very helpful. And are the funds that are expended by the city of Portland, they are then expended within the city limits of the city of Portland? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's what I thought, and I appreciate that. Last year, or maybe it was even 2 years ago, or possibly 3, all the years are starting to blend together with me, had indicated my overwhelming support for RAC, but my disappointment that there wasn't a more intentional effort to reflect the Native American history in our community. And I know that other communities in the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, British Columbia, Seattle to the north of us, have had very intentional programs and made intentional efforts to both include the local Native American community, as well as make sure that their history and culture and art is represented amongst the work. Can you tell us what you're doing to address that issue, since it is an issue that I've raised, I believe, on multiple occasions?
One of the activities, I'm not muted, okay. One of the activities that we are aware of course, and this started actually when I joined RAC, was the land acknowledgement. So I believe that has been part of the city process as well. I know our public art team worked with you over the course of fiscal year 22, so not part of our 21 presentation, with regards to the installation of art, Native and Indigenous art in your in your spaces. And then within our programs, such as our murals program, as well as public art, we do identify Indigenous and Native art Americans for opportunities that are offered through city funding.
Could I get more detail? You don't need to dig it up now. We've all had a long day, and you guys did a great job in your presentation. But could I get that information? I'd like to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the percentage of artists funded. I'd like to know how many of the directors on the Regional Arts and Culture Council board self-identify as Native American, and what special initiatives or intentional efforts are being made to reflect the arts, culture, and history of the Native community here in the city of Portland. I'd like to see what progress has been made since this issue was first raised. And last but not least, can you just tell us where are we in this community discussion around monuments? And I understand this is a very heated topic. It's one that must be approached with great thoughtfulness and sensitivity, but I haven't heard much about it of late. I'm just curious to know where it is.
Sure, and that is also a point of question for us as well. We know that the monuments, the RFP went out of Commissioner Rubio's team's office, and we are looking forward to the opportunities. We lifted up several opportunities last fall for engagement, especially within our board as part of our board meeting and our public art committee, including the statement that we offered out to the city. So we are eager and ready for every opportunity to move the monuments conversation along, specifically and intentionally around the community engagement piece.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we have Commissioner Hardesty and Commissioner Maps.
Thank you. And Mayor, I appreciated some of the questions that you asked were questions that I had and had not formulated yet. I'm also interested in, a lot of times we use BIPOC, and I'm really interested in having that broken out so that as a city, we really see where we're investing our arts dollars. BIPOC doesn't give me a lot of information. And to the mayor's point, right? I know that RAC has actually invested in some really wonderful programming and partnerships with the Native community, but clearly there's a disconnect between the work that you do and the short time you have here to tell us about all the work that you're doing. But so for me, it's important to never tell me BIPOC because that doesn't tell me anything.
I agree.
I really want to know where we're investing those dollars. And so I also had a question around, actually, I think the mayor covered it. It was actually around the monument thing, but I mean, I don't want to have that conversation today because what I know is that there will be a very long, intentional process to have all the input that we need to have. But I will say that everything that represents history and is historic represents only one slice of who we are. And so, I appreciate history, but I also appreciate up until very recently, we did not acknowledge all the harm that's been done to populations before we arrived. So I mean, it must be a balanced conversation that respects the historic perspective, but acknowledges that we didn't get a voice in those historic decision-making opportunities. And I look forward to actually not having a rush process, but really being thoughtful about if we really are the city that is inclusive and we're equitable, we will find the right solution to this, but we won't find it on the edges of people screaming at each other. We will find it because we are respectful of all of our cultures and what all of us bring to the conversation. I had something else, but I lost it. The monument thing, just every time it comes up, it just it brings up stuff. So
it does.
But no, I'll wait until we actually vote to accept the report. I see Commissioner Capps is waiting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Commissioner Hardesty. We concur with that, and we look forward to what that conversation can bring. And then I would also like to reflect on your statement with regards to using BIPOC. I hope you noticed during my presentation that I intentionally spoke out all of the assignations that are there as a person who is BIPOC. I don't say I'm BIPOC. I am Black, I am African American, I am human. We do work with the city with regards to how we pull the data, and we are looking for opportunities where we can literally pull it out and show how these dollars were spent. We do the same with our surveys, and we will definitely make sure that you have that information. Something happened.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I want to start out by first thanking RAC and the RAC team and all the artists we heard from today. You've done amazing work under enormously challenging circumstances, especially in the last couple of years. And you do an incredibly important work to our city. I've said many, many times throughout the last several years that part of our city's healing from COVID is not just a matter of physical health and economic recovery. It's also about spiritual and cultural recovery, and the work that RAC does is fundamental to that. But actually, instead of talking about the great pieces of art and performances that we've heard about today, I actually wanted to learn a little bit more about RAC as an institution and how the last couple of years have impacted you and what happens next. I think one way to get into that might be to pull up a slide that was part of the presentation. I think there's a slide that shows where RAC's funding sources came from probably in the last fiscal year. Can we pull that up, please?
That would be slide 16. And it is very hard to hear. I don't know if other people are having problems with the whooshing, but your voice is barely coming through.
Okay, well, I'll try to speak loud. This is starting to be a chronic problem. Great, thank you. So we're looking at fiscal year 2021. You know, one of the things that just really jumps out at me is the COVID Relief Fund, which in that fiscal year represented 63% of your budget. And I'm just kind of curious about how an influx of resources like that force you to evolve as an institution? And also, moving forward, how long do you expect those COVID relief dollars to be around? And should they be ramping down in the next couple of years? How is RAC going to need to change in response to the disappearance of those funds?
I'm sorry, I could hear every other word. I apologize. I think what you're asking, though, and just nod if this is correct, that you're looking at the COVID relief at 63% being a large part of our budget. What is it like when when that's not there, correct?
Yeah,
okay.
And I might be too close to the mic. I'll try to repeat it for you because I know what it's like to be on the other end of a bad connection. So, but you got the gist of my question. It looks like in the last fiscal year, 63% of your budget came from COVID relief dollars. I'm just curious as to how that sort of changed your institution. And I assume that in the next fiscal year or the fiscal year after that, these dollars will go away. And how will that impact, how will RAC have to evolve or change in response to losing 63% of your budget?
Well, because the federal dollars are passed through, they're ephemeral to begin with. So we have to put them on our audited financial statement because we receive them. But what happens is you've got something that snaps open and snaps closed. Without the federal funding, we snap back to our regular budgetary processes, which include our support through our IGA, as well as private sector and earned income dollars. An example, which you will hear when we do our presentation for FY22, will be the additional NEA dollars that we brought in FY22 to support community-based projects for the Portland metro area, primarily for two of our county partners, but those dollars will always come in and go out. That's the nature of the work that we do, or really for any nonprofit. You got a fat year, you've got a lean year. We have a budget that snaps to where it needs to be in order to fit the space. Because we've made room to be able to bring in nearly $20 million to get it to go back out into the community, we'll just go back to where we were before. Always looking at the opportunities to increase our funding and increase our connections in the community through our advocacy to really promote the work that's happening here.
Great. So did you have to hire more people to help just process those COVID dollars, or were you able to do it with existing staff?
We did part-time. We did hire 2 part-time folks for our finance team.
All right, great.
For that processing, yes.
Your folks were incredibly efficient. That's
yes, they were.
That's admirable. And as long as we're on the slide, and you just mentioned growing your resources, when I look at this pie chart, the other thing that kind of jumps out at me is the percent of your budget that comes from the private sector or earned income.
Yes.
Looks like 4% of your budget comes from the private sector or earned income. I'm not an expert on how to run an arts organization, but that seems kind of small. Are you concerned about the mix of resources that's supporting your organization at this point?
My initial response is no, because RAC's work has been centered in our agreements with our government funders. So we do the work that we are contracted to do, and that has been how RAC has been. The opportunities and efforts that our former executive director, Madison Carrier, brought in was to sit in and say, let's do more. The more money we get in, the more resources we have, the more we can do in and around our contracted obligations. So that's what we're building up, these opportunities where we're adding in more that is RAC versus what comes in from our government partners. And then also to note that the private sector, I think it's actually around 1.4. Still not, it's not going to, when you're looking at a budget that is about $20 million, it seems small. But if you extract those federal dollars, that percentage gets bigger. So we are looking and we are building our internal structures for fundraising to add in support for what we're getting from our contracted partners.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. And the last thing that I wanted to explore a little bit was your portable art collection. I think you mentioned RAC has about 2,200 pieces of portable art, which I assume were things like paintings and sculptures. And I'll tell you, one of the great perks of being a city employee is many of our buildings are decorated with art that is part of the RAC collection. I believe the last time we had a RAC report before council like this one was in 2018. I was just curious if RAC has made any new acquisitions or significant acquisitions to its portable art collection since we saw you last 4 years ago at this point. Oh my gosh.
Yes, absolutely. And that information is also included in the report, the Advancing Arts and Culture report, but we would love to and can provide everyone in council with everything that's been added to the portable artworks. We had, I believe, 3 episodes of art being added during COVID in FY21, which we also mentioned here as well. But absolutely, I mean, some stunning art came in during that time, and we were able to, with the work of with the support of the city and our community partners, fun artists to keep working.
Well, I would love to see that. I might have, if it was in my briefing packets, I might have missed it, but I would love to take a look at that. It's always fun. I think occasionally in the past I've had to look at the great privilege of flipping through Rack's catalog, and it's exciting. And I think a hidden gem. One last question before I turn it back to the presiding officer here. And that's the inverse of the question which I just asked. Since 2018, when you last came before council, has RAC deacquisitioned any pieces of portable art?
I would have to check in with our public arts director. I know that, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I will get you the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't want to guess. I know it came up in the hullabaloo of last fall's engagement around the statues, but I do not believe any of those pieces have been deaccessioned as of now. So I'm happy to get back to you with that information.
All right, great. Madam Presiding Officer, those are all the questions I have for right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Matz.
Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Commissioner Hardesty.
Commissioner Matz made me think of one more question. And so how, it's been a while since we've looked at how governments finance the Regional Arts and Cultural Council. And I heard you saying that you are working on agreement with government partners. And I'm just wondering if it's time to have a more equitable distribution of our regional partners in these efforts. Because as I listened to the mayor's question, and then I listened to Commissioner Matz, and then really looked at how little, even though we call this regional, how little regional investment there really is. I really would like to have a deeper conversation about what does it mean to be a regional arts and cultural council? Doesn't look that way from the funding chart. So this is not the day to have that conversation. Again, today is the day of celebrating really incredible artists, real intentionality. And my heart almost broke when the gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, spoke about being able to provide artist space for Asian Pacific Islanders in our community at the beginning of COVID, because Philly, Asian hate was so severe at that time. And just knowing that we were able to pivot and invest in the artist community at the same time that the city council was investing and business community and other efforts to stem that tide. And unfortunately, it still has not disappeared. It is still very prevalent. Thank you. Oh, I do have one more question. And I think you are the perfect organization to answer this question. I believe that the city of Portland needs, and the region needs, some healing. And I think that we cannot build anything until we go through a healing process. And I would really like to challenge the regional arts and culture staff and board to think about what could that look like? How could you, as our artist leaders, our creative leaders in this community, how could you lead an effort that actually helps us to create real healing? Because we are too polarized. We are too at the edges as a community. And it's going to be a hard road back. And I think having artists and musicians and other creative types leading our healing is something that I would hope, I want to challenge you to think about. And please come in and let me know how we can support that. That is the number one unmet need that I see today. And we cannot pretend that we don't have to go through a grieving and healing process.
I am 100% with you. We accept your challenge. However, I do want to put out here that we also are going to need your partnership for that. There's still some unresolved items from 2020 that we as a community need to face, and we need to face it head on so we can move through it.
I'm ready.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any public testimony for this item?
3 individuals have signed up. So first we have Aubrey Russell.
Can anyone hear me? I was invited and joined very late there, so I didn't hear the prompt. My name is Aubrey Russell. RAC's annual report does not mention removal of city's public art, a topic that must have taken much attention and resources in 2021. It is strange that an unaccountable, non-transparent private nonprofit should have given itself an expanded role in the removal of public art. The RAC report does not mention its efforts, the efforts of its public arts director in February of 2021 to exclude the Lincoln and Roosevelt monuments from the listing of the South Park blocks to the National Register. The report also doesn't mention that RAC did not go to the city for approval as required under its contract with the city. RAC did not go to the city for approval of new policies relating to the removal of public art. Instead, those policies were formed behind closed doors by RAC staff. The unapproved policies were used by the RAC board to recommend removal of public art. These details are not discussed in the report, but the report asserts its recommendation for removal of art should be adhered to. So RAC supports its recommendation, which flows from a non-transparent, unaccountable private nonprofit acting in explicit violation of its contract with you, the city. I and others have urged the city to pause the removal of public art until there can be a transparent and professional process in place. Instead, we got the Thompson Fountain process. RAC did not push for return of the Thompson Fountain. RAC did not consider the Thompson Fountain to be public art. RAC's report also does not mention RAC's new contract with the city. I hope that you are following how that contract may address concerns raised by the 2018 city audit of RAC, in particular the concern that oversight of RAC is not sufficient to ensure the city's interests. Related to the oversight of RAC, the city hired a new city arts program manager in November of 2020. The city, with Commissioner Udaley as arts commissioner, hired a 17-year veteran of RAC, Jeff Hawthorne, to be in charge of oversight and accountability of RAC. At the same moment, Commissioner Udaley saw the removal of art as urgent. On October 21, 2020, Udaley's office wrote an email to RAC titled Deaccessioning Plans, quote, Commissioner Udaley would like to start this process as soon as possible. Community is clearly calling for a swift reckoning with our collection. Our commissioner would like for the incoming city arts program manager to work with our office, RAC, and community partners on deaccessioning conversation. Swift reckoning, city arts program manager as soon as possible. The arts commissioner, Daly, set this course in 2021. Thank you.
Next, we have Madison Cario.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. My name is Madison Cario. I use they, them pronouns. I am a white trans person wearing glasses, a striped suit, jacket with a smart bow tie above my peach fuzz. And I am thrilled to be in City Hall. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to be here in person in support of the agenda item 487 and in support of RAC's annual report. I am coming from a place of joy and abundance. I am here today to offer us a moment, this moment, to pause, reflect, and celebrate. RAC has accomplished a lot in the last few years, and all of these accomplishments have been in partnership with the many communities we serve and with you, local government, regional government, and with some amazing national recognition and support. RAC is a service organization. Their vision is simple and achievable, a thriving region powered by creativity with arts and culture in every neighborhood. That's something I know we all want. Access, joy, creativity, community, culture, prosperity, and equity. That's the goal, and RAC reaches that goal one person at a time, leveraging dollars and networks, connecting artists, creatives, and communities with resources, opportunities, and access. The partnership between the city and RAC continues to grow deeper, better, and clearer, because it's a partnership that's built on working with, not for. Collectively, we work with each other. We work with the people, and we work with and in service to the endless imagination and potential that flows through our communities. So today, I'd like to lift up the fact that we can and do accomplish more in collaboration. And I invite us to take this moment, right now, to celebrate the work of everyone collectively as we continue to advance arts and culture here in Portland. Mayor, commissioners, and your teams, thank you for the work you do. RAC board and team, thank you for the work you do. Artists, creatives, makers, doers, dreamers, thank you. You are what makes Portland magical. While it was a challenging year, fiscal year 21 proved once again that we are truly stronger and more impactful together. Thank you for the time.
Madam Chair, can Madison, before you can go back to your seat, I just wanted to thank you for that testimony. I really appreciate your patience. I saw you in chambers yesterday when we had some technical difficulties. We apologize for that. We hate to not use people's time effectively. So we really appreciate the fact that you made the effort to be in chambers both yesterday, and I know today's been a long day too. So it's great to hear your voice, and it's good to see you again. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Next is Jamie Dunphy.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jamie Dunphy. I'm speaking today on behalf of the organization Music Portland. I want to start by acknowledging and thanking the Portland City Council for their continued support of the arts in our city, especially over the pandemic. I'm speaking to you today specifically to express disappointment in the annual report from RAC and the lack of financial accountability and transparency within. There are no financial totals in for RAC's budget, how they spent their money, or what the arts community and taxpayers got in return. As said before, the City of Portland allocates $3.7 million from the general fund directly to RAC every year. According to RAC's annual report, this accounts for 13.7% of their total budget. And since it's not listed anywhere in the report, I did the basic math, and this works out to just over $20 million budget for fiscal year 2021. A year where there were almost no performances happening. Stages stood bare, theaters sat empty. I hope that these dollars went into the pockets of artists who weren't able to perform, but this report has no information in it. If you exclude the federal one-time COVID grants, Portland taxpayers provided more than 60% of RAC's budget. I spent years on this very subject when I served on the staff of Commissioner Nick Fish, and I know how difficult getting basic financial transparency was back then when I served the Arts Commissioner. Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. Let the public know how the arts community is being supported more clearly and broaden the lens of what kind of art is being supported. RAC almost exclusively focuses on the nonprofit arts sector, supporting certain types of artists and nonprofit arts organizations. Music Portland has repeatedly pointed out to you that this excludes an enormous sector of the arts community. Anecdote is not evidence. Outside of the Symphony and Rock Dojo, who sounds like a fantastic organization, the music industry in Portland does not receive their fair share of public dollars, despite the outsized role music plays in the arts ecosystem. Every member of this body has voiced support for the music industry, and no city council has ever voted to exclude musicians from public dollars. That's a choice made on your behalf. We've now also heard that the long-awaited city cultural plan, which we have repeatedly advocated for, and this body is spending over $500,000 on, will focus only on the nonprofit arts and culture of the city. This is a huge mistake. It's short-sighted and won't provide you the accurate information that this plan has the potential to provide. Mayor and commissioners, please do not confuse liking the arts with supporting the arts. It's wonderful to hear about all the individual stories of how RAC has supported art, but this is an enormous sum of money that is being spent on the arts without any actual public accountability, any expectation of return or results, and even basic transparency about where public dollars are being spent. We know where they aren't being spent. You can and should demand more from how precious few public dollars are being spent to support something that we all care about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who testified. Does that conclude our testimony?
Yes, it does.
Okay, would you please call the roll? Oh, wait, if there's no further discussion, I move to accept the report, and can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can you please call the roll?
Hardesty.
Aye. Oh, let me wait. I can't just say aye. Let me just say how much I appreciate everyone who showed up today to testify. How incredible the artist work was that was presented to us that we heard about today, and how grateful I am for our ability as a city to invest in artists during some of the hardest times that the city has ever seen. And so even though I have questions, I always have questions, I am very grateful for the incredible work that was done during what, again, has been the most troubling time. And I look forward to you responding to my challenge because I think that's some really important work that we must do collectively. I vote aye.
Maps.
I want to thank RAC for the work they've done over the course of the pandemic. If I'm right, we haven't had a RAC report since 2018, which is just a sign of our RAC report in chambers since 2018. So I'm glad that we have an opportunity to re-engage in this discussion. And I want to thank RAC for all the work they've done in the arts community and to support artists during the COVID pandemic. I appreciated the presentations that we have seen today, especially being able to hear the voices of artists. And I hope as we emerge from the pandemic, we get even more of that. I do think there were some interesting questions about how the arts community can come together to make arts a vibrant and a vibrant part of our community and continue to reinvent the arts as we move into the even deeper into the 21st century. And I certainly expect RAC to be part of that conversation. I also really want to celebrate and applaud my colleague, Carmen Rubio, who has been a champion of the arts in so many forms in the time I've been on council. I think that the arts in Portland have a very bright future, and that is why I am glad to vote aye today. Thank you.
Rubio.
I want to thank RAC staff and board members and all the guests that were here today for the very informative and inspiring presentation. It's very clear that RAC's deep roots in the community, together with their commitment to equity and inclusion, have had very profound impacts on our city. And these last 3 years have been incredibly hard on our creative community. But despite all this, the arts did thrive in the ways that it could during this time, and it was also thriving. And as we experienced significant and sustained protests for racial justice, that spurred a groundswell of really beautiful and compelling art during this time. And the partnership with RAC meant that the city was able to support Portland's creative communities in this unique and cultural moment. So next, we're embarking on several big projects and transformational ones as well, not only with monuments, but the cultural planning process. And we know these things will shape our city in good ways and be more inclusive of all the arts community that we have here for years to come. So we look forward to continuing the partnership. I want to thank my colleagues for their thoughtful questions today and engagement. And for these reasons, I'm very happy to vote aye.
Wheeler?
Yeah, thanks everybody for the presentation. I appreciated it. And thanks for the hard work and the leadership of the folks who are involved with RAC. I also, like Commissioner Rubio, I want to underscore the importance of the work you've done around diversity and inclusion and making sure that people feel that they are absolutely welcomed and encouraged to be active participants in the arts and culture community here in the city of Portland. I should have described myself earlier. I'm an old white guy, graying hair, looking increasingly tired and beleaguered by the day, but I like to hope that I still have my sense of humor fully intact. Colleagues, this is a big expenditure for the Portland City Council. These are taxpayer funds, and we have a duty and an obligation to make sure that they are spent with the same effectiveness that we demand from other pools of funding that goes towards serving our houseless population, funds that go into community safety, funds that go into transportation and infrastructure. Arts should be no different. And I want to be clear that questioning where these dollars are going and how effectively they are spent should not be seen as an affront to artists or the art community. It should be seen as a direct desire to support that community. So I will say this, I think the report provided the information we asked for, but it doesn't get to some of the issues that I think we need to be able to explicitly report back to the public. And I'm concerned about our overrepresentation, particularly our general fund dollars in the overall makeup of this fund. It's not a regional fund. It's a City of Portland led fund. And if the rest of the region isn't ponying up, I got to ask myself, why not? I think for next year's report, I'd like to have a little more insight into that. Who is the arts community? One of our testifiers suggested that our arts dollars that we're allocating through RAC in lieu of the City Council directly managing these resources and supporting the arts and culture community in our city, if we are doing this at arm's length distance through a contractor, I have to ask the question, who's excluded? I'd like to know explicitly if there are arts and culture organizations or individuals in our community who are not part of this mix. And if they're not, we should do something about that. Maybe they are, I don't know. I'd like to know more about survey data. It's not unusual for this City Council to go out and survey various communities that are recipients of public funding for the purpose of making sure that we're serving the totality of the community. I'd like to know a little bit more about whether or not people who are in the arts and culture community feel that this City Council is best serving their needs through this mechanism that we are contracting out. And I don't honestly know the answer to that question. It could be that RAC is doing an exceptional job. I just don't know, because we really don't have a basis for it. We heard some very positive insight today from a number of artists, and they seem extremely happy with the relationship they have and the interactions they have with RAC. And I hope that's universal or close to it. But I wonder if there's more that we should know. So I guess my request for next year is this, because it's not on RAC, it's on us. You know, ultimately, we cannot escape accountability, even if we're doing this at arm's length distance through a contractor. I think over the course of the next 6 to 8 months before RAC begins in earnest preparing next year's report, that we collectively work together under the auspices of the Arts Commissioner, Commissioner Rubio, who I think is doing a great job on this front. But we should really sit down and ask ourselves collectively, what questions do we want to ask? What do we want answered? What information do we want in the report? And give the good folks at RAC adequate lead time and perhaps even resource to be able to collect the information that we need to hear. That's just my thoughts on this. Again, I've asked for information. I went back and checked. It's been 5 years since I first asked about what is the plan around being more inclusive to our Indigenous population in this community and respecting their arts and their culture. And I still don't have my answer all these years later, but what's changed is over the course of those years, I have voted for something like $20 million in general fund resources to go through this program. And I'd like to know, is it doing what we want it to do? And again, that's on us. So I'm going to vote for this, obviously, and I support it. And I appreciate the presentation, but I think we need to tighten the, increase the level of scrutiny that we're putting into this program and make sure that it's actually serving the public in the way we think it is. That's all I'll say for today, but I appreciate it. I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the report is accepted. Thank you, everyone, again, all the presenters. This concludes our afternoon session, and we are adjourned. Thanks.